Let's get started. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad people are joining us, and I know more will filter in for this extraordinary panel. Thank you for our panelists who are here to just have a discussion today, have a conversation about designing for belonging and thinking about entrepreneurship and diversity and inclusion in entrepreneurship all across the lifespan, and what that means and how it comes through the work that you do, and what you hope to see for the future. All right, so let's kick it off with intros. I think I'm going to have Akosi start and just share with everyone that's watching, and who may be watching this later, who you are, where you're from, a bit about your story and the work that you do as it relates to entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Thanks, Erica, for having me. I'm so excited. My name is Akosi Echampoma Wala, and I was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. My family and I came to the US about in 2004. I lost the count of the years now, but we came in 2004, and for us, it was all about education. My mom wanted us to get better education, better lifestyle. So that's why we came to the US. And ever since then, I've been educating myself, doing what I was told to do. So right now I'm getting my doctorate in engineering management. And I am the director for Norfolk State University Innovation Center and the founder of Citylighter Movement. And so my passion is to understand how to use education, engineering principles to help underserved communities in entrepreneurship education and in entrepreneurship growth in general. And so that is a little bit about myself. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Rachel, you want to go next?
Absolutely, thank you. So I'm Rachel Inegbedion from Nigeria, and I am a disability advocate, a development professional providing empowerment tools and resources for persons with disability in Nigeria. I'm also a Mandela Washington Fellow. It's a U.S. Department of State program for young African leaders. And apart from that, one of the things that I find very passionate about myself is the ability to use technology to empower people with disability, which enabled us to be discovered by Google last year as Google Leap Takers. And apart from that, we are also passionate about providing career opportunities for people with disability, especially women, because we want women and young girls to thrive, young girls with disabilities to thrive across non-disabled persons and be productive and safe. So that's basically a sum of me. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I'll turn it over to Beth and then Chaz next.
Great, thank you. It's an honor to be here with everybody today. So I'm Beth Goldstein. I am the director of the Youth Impact Lab at Babson College, which is in Massachusetts, known for its entrepreneurship business programs. I'm also entrepreneurship faculty at the college. By way of background, it's been an interesting journey for me. I actually have a business background. I'm a practitioner by trade, have run consulting firms and taught entrepreneurship and marketing for many years. But through my journey of educating college students, I became intrigued about the process of how do people really learn, and how do they become change agents, and decided in my 50s to go back and pursue my doctorate in education, which I recently completed at Johns Hopkins University School of Education. And I'm really passionate about helping others see entrepreneurship as a way to create greater equity. It's not about building a business. It's about having a mindset that helps youth really have agency, self-efficacy, a belief that they can persevere. And that's really where my passion is. So I'm excited to be part of this group, and I thank you.
Chaz, it's
Wow,
all
I
you.
right, I was like, I couldn't find the mute button. Wow, first of all, I just want to say this is amazing. This group of women is amazing. But my name is Chaz, well, Chastity, and I am the social impact director for Elevate Your Essence, and I'm also a co-founder. And honestly, our purpose and our passion in this is just to give youth an experience. Half of the time, the main issue with a lot of youth is that they feel like they don't exactly know which avenues to take. They don't know how to find their passions. They don't know, exactly what is their passions versus what they've been told is their passion. And so I think it's a big thing for us to create those environments to where youth can co-collaborate and get mentorship, not only from people that are, within the field and industries that they want to be in, but from their own peers as well. That just creates a lot of leadership, and it also creates a sense of belonging. So I'm very passionate about that. I love youth. I love kids. I'm also a youth pastor for St. John's Northwest in Houston, youth director. And I am helping them to build basically from the ground up, their creativity, how they're going to teach kids, how they can get them engaged, how they can be fun. I'm very big and up and passionate myself. So I work with kids all the time. That's like, I don't want to be anywhere else doing anything else. But yeah, I am 24 years old. So me getting into entrepreneurship kind of just recently started within 2020, the pandemic year. But I think that was a great year for everyone to kind of learn what they wanted to do and have their own passions. And I started out wanting to do biology, which, turned into me learning about child development and just learning how they can learn different skills and collaborate with different people. So yeah, that's what keeps me passionate and running in this entrepreneurship.
I love it. I love it. Chaz, I'm going to put you on the spot though, because I want that to be our first question for our conversation is, so you told us the moment in time, 2020 was when you stumbled upon entrepreneurship. How did it happen? Did you even know you were doing it? Was it just entrepreneurship? Was it entrepreneurship education? Walk us through that. Like, just tell us the story.
Well, so in 2020, I was actually, let me skip ahead. So in 2019, I was actually in college playing volleyball. That was like the first, experience I got with leadership. I was the captain of the team, I was one of the bigger players, but for me, it was really important for me to have like that teamwork ability. And then after basically school, the pandemic happened. And of course, everybody in that time was basically just worried about how they were going to, make ends meet, do what they needed to do in order to provide for themselves, their family, whatever needed to happen. And for me, I was worried about, like, I don't really want to do biology. Like, what am I going to do? Like, and so then I got into trading and marketing. And it was really interesting for me because around this time is when Forex came out. And Forex, I had gotten a lot of things about Forex, but the main thing I learned in Forex was entrepreneurship and learning about, mindset and team building and, how to basically live in an economy where it is not always equitable. We were learning investing. Like I was learning things that I never thought that I would be learning in my life, so that is honestly how I got into entrepreneurship. And then from there, I was like, well, I don't really think this fits me, but it was good to know. And then I started walking more into my purpose as far as, okay, well, I'm going to start doing nannying. I have my own business nannying for 3 years now, which is really cool. And I just kind of went from, learning through different mentors and through YouTube University and, different programs. And so that's how I got started, honestly.
I love that. I love the organic story. And it's so neat. Yeah, as to once you found something you were really interested in, just hooked on and kept going with it. Any others just have, kind of an origin story, whether it started with a lemonade stand or I took a class in college?
Yeah, I do.
like I mentioned, I was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa, and I grew up with my grandma. And my grandma had different stores that she used to like lease out to people to sell their own stuff in the store. And so growing up, I was very young, like 6, 7. That was when I would be selling to people, communicating with people in the stores. And that was also when I started counting money at a very young age after work, counting all the income, the revenues that came in. And so I grew up very excited about business and entrepreneurship, that they started calling me Sika, which in our language it means money. So I had a nickname. Yeah, my nickname, everybody would call me Sika. Up till today, they still call me that, close family members. And so that's a little story for me.
That's awesome. Anybody else? Education or venture stories?
Okay, I think I'll go. I'll talk about education. It's really passionate to me because it was during COVID that we realized that young persons with disability were being left behind. So when there was closure of schools and all of that happening, it was really eminent because people with disabilities, like people with hard of hearing, could not concentrate with technologies such as TV without sign language interpreters, or visually impaired persons without text-to-speech softwares. It was really very tough. And then you talk about people with disabilities who are really under-resourced. So it was a struggle. And we had to come up with something really very innovative. And what we did differently was to provide community-based programs for young adults with autism and with Down syndrome, so that they could learn real-life experiences through STEM and robotics. And it was really very good, and that got us quite fired up when we got recognized by the United Nations for one of the 10 young leaders inspired to change the world during COVID. So yes, it's something that is really very passionate to us, inclusive education, because right here, it's not something that you see every time when you have young persons with disability integrating into the educational sector. Most times, a lot of parents would want to lock them up in their homes because of secret shame and other cultural biases. So we are breaking that stereotype to say, hey, bring out your children, let them learn some vocational training or learn some sort of educational skill that could prepare them for the future of work, because we believe that after they've been trained, the next phase is internships, entrepreneurship, or employment. So we need them to transit from that mode to somewhere where they can earn a decent living. And it's been a very rocky hill, but we're trying our best, and we hope that as we engage forth in this program, I could as well learn some best practices from some of our colleagues here, and then who knows, some of us could learn from me as well. So that's it. Thank you.
I think it's so neat. We've had 3 stories, and the theme across all 3 stories was, I saw a problem, I saw an opportunity. It wasn't just like I learned this thing in school or I had a class in school. I went out to solve a problem or pursue an opportunity and sell things, in Akosia's example. Beth, if you live, think, breathe about youth entrepreneurship, and then learning the principles of entrepreneurship and developing those mindsets, that is your world. In your perfect world, where do you think, when do you hope youth begin to be exposed to entrepreneurship, and why?
That's such a great question. I've loved listening to everybody's stories. So entrepreneurship is not about building a business. And what's probably one of the big misnomers that we're always trying to correct, that it is exactly as these impressive women just said, it's about seeing a problem and then figuring out how do I solve it? And then how do I, believe that I've got that agency to solve it? And, one of the things we know is that the earlier someone develops that self-efficacy, that confidence that says so they can say to themselves, I've got the power to address this problem and solve it, the better they'll be entrepreneurial thinkers and leaders for their entire career. And so, that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in youth entrepreneurship, is because, I've been teaching undergrads and MBA students for many, many years, and some already have self-confidence, but others, they don't have that belief in their skill set. And I always have thought to myself, wow, if I got them 5 years earlier, imagine, how much we can help empower them. So, my belief is the earlier the better. If you see kindergartners solving problems, they've got no box, right? They've got lots of agency. They believe in themselves and their skill sets. And then we beat it out of them as they get older for multiple reasons. But, if you're working with I love working in middle and high school kids, or really their educators or these professionals, because they can then really create that power. So that's where I'm at.
That resonates so much. And Chaz, I'm seeing you nod, and I'm going to put you on the spot because you are saying some of the same things or you said earlier, some of the same things that Beth is sharing right now about it fosters belonging, to be able to see a problem, solve a problem. Agency, belonging comes through that. We just expand on that. Like, what are your thoughts around that? Why does that happen?
Yeah, Beth, you hit every nail on the head. I think it's really important to foster that in children, especially like Beth said, the younger the better, honestly. But because of human dynamics and evolution, their brain is not as developed as we would need them to be in order to learn some of the more complex things about entrepreneurship. But having them to collaborate with others is entrepreneurship. Putting them in spaces to where they feel like, okay, this may be new to me, but as long as I can develop it, as long as I can do it, then okay, I can gain that confidence in myself and help other outside of myself and my community. And I think it's really, really important to have those, like Beth said, educators who are very well versed in, just entrepreneurship and how to better teach kids in a way that is relatable to them. As we continue to grow and we change, and as we continue to evolve, there's more technology coming out. There's kids are being switched from writing to being on an iPad or learning visually. And there are a lot of kids with disabilities too now who need, those special needs or those special accommodations to get them to understand their own worth and their own confidence in themselves. So I completely agree with Beth. That is very, very important to foster that as young as possible.
Mm-hmm. I love this. Akosi, I'm coming to you because I know this is also something that you think about: inclusion, belonging, diversity in ecosystems. What does this mean for you at your work, both in Citylighter and at Norfolk State University? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Just a little background. When I first really got education as far as structured education, when I got connected to the Women's Business Center. So the Women's Business Center was how I started learning, and the Women's Business Center, of course, attracts women, and it really attracts a lot of Black women. And so in that environment, I started realizing that, there are gaps in knowledge, right? And how people think. So it wasn't, but I didn't quite know what it was, right? Because, I was just learning. But it wasn't until I got to the OD Innovation Center, that was when we were talking about scalability and the business models designed with human centered thinking inside and before you come up with different products and services. So once I realized that the education that has research backed up with it offers more, and our community really need that when it comes to the underserved community. It's just entrepreneurship needs to be taught in a very organized way, right? And not in an ad hoc way. So a very self-organized way. So I think the more we can package entrepreneurship education in a structured way for the underserved community, especially the Black community, it will be very helpful. And that is exactly what we've been trying to do at the Innovation Center, is that introducing different methodologies that will help people really think through it. Okay, I can go from here to there. Even if I'm going back and forth, I have a structured approach that I know, the roadmap to which I need concerning the problem and the industry that I am in. And so I would love to see the underserved community, especially the Black community, be introduced more to structured learning when it comes to entrepreneurship.
I think you're exactly right. Both from so many perspectives. Entrepreneurship is a transformative experience for humans, just personally. The experience, probably that's very significant. Entrepreneurship equips people with extraordinary skills that allow them to navigate and pursue opportunities in the world, career or otherwise. And then maybe the most formal or structured way, which is really where you work, Akosi, is building successful businesses, especially owned by individuals that belong to marginalized communities. Building successful businesses generate financial assets and build generational wealth for those communities, within those communities, which certainly in the United States is a gap to be addressed, the wealth gap. So I really appreciate that perspective on inclusion and what it means to foster belonging for some of the results that you're driving for. Rachel, I love that you bring in this perspective of the disability community and what it means to incorporate entrepreneurship education for them and to engage them in these opportunities, these practices.
Okay, so I didn't get your question. Would you like rephrase? Or
sure. So for you, what does inclusion mean to you in your work?
Okay, I think for me, especially for the community we serve, inclusion means them being able to get a seat on the table and then own their voices, and then they're able to speak up for themselves, because that's basically what we see them have. We've had young adults with Down syndrome, after they've been taught robotics and career practices, they reach out to us and say, hey, auntie, I would want to be an IT professional. But the truth of the matter is, how many employers are willing to employ them? How many people are willing to see them, and take away that stereotype that they have a disability and actually give them the value for their money when they have the competency to do the job? So that's basically where we're trying to meet, bridging the gap where people with disabilities can be included, not just in, entrepreneurship, but education, in career opportunities, in health, in self-advocacy, in inclusive participation, which is all round, and most especially humanity, seeing them as human first and every other thing secondary. So that's basically what inclusion means to me. I don't know if any of my colleagues feel strongly about this. Thank you.
I'm going to take it over to Beth, because so much of this about, especially when we're talking about young people, is who is the expert, the adult leading the experience. And that might be, in the elementary grades, it might be in high school, or maybe even at the higher ed level. So what are you talking to educators about when it comes to not just teaching entrepreneurial skills, but fostering that inclusion and belonging so that every kid feels like they can and should, is inspired to in their entrepreneurial pursuits?
Such an important question. And when I run training programs with educators, I start with helping them see themselves as entrepreneurs. You know, I think educators are the quintessential entrepreneurs, but when I ask them in first sessions, do you see yourself as an entrepreneur? Most say no, because they define entrepreneurship as developing a business or having some great financial skills, you know, things that, yeah, those are okay skill sets, but having the vision to see themselves as problem solvers who have, you know, think of your typical educator, very low resources, challenges, continuously addressing different students' needs in their classrooms, really trying to make an impact on their students and create agency within students and create that confidence. So doing all that means you have to see yourself as an entrepreneur. And when you start to have that identity and realize, wait, I'm an entrepreneur, and oh, now I see it differently, I can now help my students see themselves in that same way, as to self-identify as an entrepreneur or a change agent, and to create the skill sets, those social emotional skills that we actually refer to as power skills, because those are not soft skills, right? You know, they're known as soft skills. But people think of entrepreneurship as the hard skills, the business skills, the finance, the marketing, but that's not really what it's about. And so what my goal is when I work with teachers is to help them first see themselves as change makers, as having that agency to help their students position and grow and improve their social emotional learning. And once they've got it, now they can really help their students see that. So that's really my goal.
That's awesome. That again, it all comes back to mindset, like this centering the mindset development first. Chaz, this is so close to the work that you're doing with Elevate Your Essence. Only it's like from a youth to youth lens instead of educator to educator lens. I have two questions for you. The first question is, you are the youngest among us. You are the closest to formal education experiences. What, kind of lit a spark in you about teachers or educational experiences? What made you feel included? What fostered belonging for you at different points, and still now in your educational experience?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think, of course, I'm actually a type of kid who I do like to learn on my own. I love books. I love reading. I love to look at personal development things. And it's really ironic that I'm in education, because I was the type of kid in school where it was like, I was good at school, but I wasn't interested in it. Like I could get the work done and I can do the things, but I wasn't interested in what I was doing. And I think that's what honestly kind of sparked something in me as I was, growing and out of college, because it was like, it wasn't that I didn't love learning. It wasn't that I didn't love to, be around these things and experience different things. It was just that I'm the type of kid where I can't be at my desk all the time. Like I want to experience things firsthand and I want to do those things. So when I came into volleyball and getting into college, I think when I started to actually foster like the importance of education was my junior year, kind of late, but my junior year of college, when I was like, okay, of course it's the pressures of life. And, you're like, I got to figure it out. Like, I got to figure it out. Like, if I don't figure it out, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I think as I was continuing to find myself, I had a lot of mentors, like my coaches. Grant now is my peer-to-peer mentor, which actually helps me to foster that into Elevate Your Essence, because whenever me and Grant get together, or whenever me, Grant, or Corey, or, my co-founders or our VC council, whenever we get together, of course, it is co-collaborative. Like it is definitely where we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and I'm learning something from Grant about marketing, and he's learning something from me about creativity and how we can use these different tools and platforms to honestly reach our youth in a way that will make them say like, okay, I understand this. This is something I feel like I'm capable of doing. This is something I feel like I'm capable of teaching others. And then we incorporate that peer-to-peer mentorship where they're like, okay, we're going through these steps together. We're actually planning on doing a summit this summer for youth. And they're going to be going through a whole thing where they have a presentation, we have a retreat for them. They have a 6 weeks program, which I'm coming up for the curriculum for, which is really fun for me because that's the side of entrepreneurship, like Beth was saying. Whenever you are a teacher and you have to create, you are an entrepreneur. You are creating something for other people to utilize. And I think that's the whole purpose of entrepreneurship, is to be a purpose to others. And that is very important to teach. So I hope that answered your question pretty well.
We got a lot of great insights. That was excellent. Why don't we end here? And this is a big question, so I'll let everyone chime in as they feel inspired. What do you hope entrepreneurship education and entrepreneurial spaces look like in 5 and 10 years? The experiences of people across their lifespans, through the work that you're doing, and just what your vision is for the future. That's what I'd like to know. What are we building towards?
Oh, well, I guess since I'm unmuted, I might as well go, huh? Well, I was like, I'm unmuted, I might as well. I say for me, I want to see youth being included more at the table. And when I say included at the table, I'm not expecting youth to have all the experience in the world. I mean, that's just not possible. But as us being educators and as us being leaders, because we are all change makers, I think it's very important to have youth be in the conversation, be a part of the table. If you have, if there's a bring your kid to work day, like please take advantage of those things. Simply because though, yes, it may seem like they're a little bored with it, at least they know that that's not something they want to do. Like give kids the opportunity to not only learn from, your family, but learn from people outside of your family, give them the experience. I think that is the most important thing. Yeah. Experience is a really big thing. So that's what I want to see.
I like that the word experience has come out in so many of your responses, because so much of what is at the heart of learning entrepreneurship is actually experiential learning, of just doing and reflecting on the processes. And I'm Team Beth, and I'm going to kick it to Team Beth for her vision of the future next. If I had it my way, I mean, it's, reading, math, writing, science, and entrepreneurship. That's the core of a student's journey. But I would love to hear what you think, Beth.
It's interesting. I think entrepreneurship can be taught in math, in science, in all those classes, because the content, of course, is very important, but how you approach a math problem can have an entrepreneurial lens, right? And I think the pandemic gave us some great lessons in terms of where are we going with our educational systems, what's working, what's not working. We've had such a increase in the gap in equitable education over the past 2 years, where we already had, challenges really creating the same opportunities for everybody. And that's only gotten worse through the pandemic. But I'd also like to think that we have this opportunity now to start really rethinking what works and how do we democratize these opportunities. You've got universities who are trying to figure out what else can they be doing and how can they be preparing more students in a more equitable way to either enter college, or if they're not going to enter college, how do we give them the skill sets? I do think universities have a level of responsibility for that. And Babson's a big believer and proponent of that as well. So, you know, I don't know all the answers. I do have a lot of the questions, which is an entrepreneurial approach to how we face this. But I am hoping that we'll see the pandemic as this opportunity to really make change happen in how we educate, so that we educate more people who have more opportunities who wouldn't have had them before.
I think that's excellent. I like that you mentioned the responsibility that we can put on higher education. Something that we think about a lot at 3DS though is also there are so many young people in Texas, across the country, across the around the world that don't pursue formal higher education for a variety of reasons, and that when that happens, there are actually limited ways for you to engage, to learn formally, and that has implications of the opportunities that are in front of you. So I'm going to put Akosi on the spot, then coming from that angle, because you do work, you are thinking about adult populations, both you think both in a higher ed setting and outside of a higher ed setting. So what do you hope that the Hampton Roads area looks like in 5 years, based on what you're wanting to build?
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great question. And 5 years is not so far, so I think I can answer this question very clearly.
You can do 10 too if you're really ambitious. That's good.
And I think Beth had mentioned the phrase change agents, right? Which I see the ecosystem leaders as the folks that lead the changes and bring resources into Hampton Roads. I would definitely love to see people of color in these seats, like Rachel mentioned, giving us seats at when these resources and decisions are being made in Hampton Roads, because a system cannot be designed without having people in mind, right? And our folks understand the problems that we're having, so we have to have seats in these places. And so more of that will help foster that. And I would love to see these change agents be educated with some of the things Beth was talking about. They need to understand how to solve problems in a logical and a systematic way, right? And so that is, as far as the leadership side, that's what I want to see. For the entrepreneurs, I want to see more, like I mentioned earlier, just more organized education in a way that, our minds, we think very in a logical way. And when we don't understand a problem, our mind is trying to gather what we already know to make it make sense. And so it only makes sense to understand entrepreneurship from a structured and an educated approach. And so that's what I want to see more of that in our community.
I think that you're spot on, and it reminds me of something. Our vice president of programs, her name's Shandell Stone. She says this a lot, and she reminds me all the time, is that marginalized communities have a rich, deep history of entrepreneurship that goes far unrecognized, for all the entrepreneurial activity that is actually there. What has been lacking is what you're saying, a formalized method for training, for educating and supporting, to increase the likelihood that those businesses succeed, sustain over time, grow and scale, because the businesses are being built, the businesses are there, the problem solving is there. It's some of these formal structures that haven't allowed them to grow and thrive in the way that they potentially could. And I know you've seen that, and I know that's right at the heart of Citylighter. That is why Citylighter exists. And I'm really excited for the work that you will do there because of that. Okay, so Rachel, coming to you for this perspective, what do you hope for the communities that you serve, but then also more broadly, what do you hope that entrepreneurship education looks like for anyone, honestly, in 5 and 10 years?
Okay, my answer is simple. That vulnerable persons get equal rights and access to not just basic services such as new education technologies that will be available to them at that time, but also social services that can lead them to become really successful entrepreneurs or employees of labor. And this will only happen if we get them to start now, to start emulating role models. We are role models, so they could start emulating us and get some best practices on how to do it. And then, like Chaz said, practice, experience, exposing them to these experiences that are very, very important for the next 5 years. And then secondly, accessibility, having a world where people in vulnerable situations, such as people with disabilities, are able to access educational resources that are really not just affordable, but quality and really inclusive for them. And most especially, having them become, like Beth mentioned, change agents that can become problem solvers over time to other customers and other customers with disability and without disability in a wider range. It's really important because we're getting to a world where without the right sets of skills in the educational sector, in experience, and also in best practices, people will become redundant, and we don't want people to become redundant. So it applies to people who are vulnerable as well. We need to carry them along and have a diverse culture where everyone is included, like you mentioned, Erica, and then they are involved in ensuring a sort of supportive ecosystem where they thrive in terms of education, where they thrive in terms of employment, and where they thrive in terms of making their community better. So that's what I see in the next 5 years, from now. Thank you.
So much of that resonates, and I just love your emphatic message of this is simple. It is access and inclusion. And I think to connect to one of Kusia's points, so much of, we can be excited about expanding entrepreneurial opportunities and education to so many people. And at the start of that needs to be centering those who may have the biggest barriers to access at the center of design and letting it flow from there. I love, the tone that your message carries in that. This has been such an inspiring discussion. I wish I could have been taking notes and quotes this whole time, but I couldn't because I was moderating. But let's do this as we wrap up. I know there's so many people that have stopped by this session, will watch the recording later on and be very curious about the work that you're doing. So, and want to follow up. So let's just go through the line. And we'll start with Beth, and then we'll pass it from there. The work you're doing, what it's called, the core, nature of the work, and where people can find more information. Let's do that.
Okay, I'll keep that simple. So again, I'm Beth Goldstein. I'm the director of Babson College's Youth Impact Lab. And you can find out more about us at babson.edu/youth impact. Try to keep it simple. And we basically offer 2 major programs: a certificate in youth entrepreneurship education, which is for educators and youth professionals to learn how to deliver EPIC. And EPIC is our curriculum for youth, which stands for the Entrepreneurship Program for Innovators and Change Makers. And so all the information is on the website, and you could always email me at bgoldstein@babson.edu. Is that what you were looking for, Erica?
That was perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Let's jump over to Akosi.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm the founder of Citylighter Movement, and is City, CITY, Lighter, Lichter. All right, Citylighter Movement. And what we do for our program, our first program, we are really serving the Black community. And so it is taking service-based businesses and people with different professional experiences and helping them digitize what they do and helping them market it so that they can scale online. And so it's a plan and a program to help service-based businesses scale online and build scalable business models, even if you're service-based business. And so you can find me by just emailing me, Akosia, which is AKOSUA at citylightermovement.com. Thank you.
Let's do Rachel and then Chaz.
All right, thank you. So I am the founder and executive director of the Special Needs Initiative for Growth, also known as Initiative for National Growth. And we are based in Lagos State, Nigeria, in West Africa. And what we do is we provide empowerment tools and resources for persons with disability. We do this through providing demand-driven IT entrepreneurship and career development to enable either employment or self-employment, after which they are mentored or supported or they secure an internship or a job or given a small grant to start up a business. And then we also provide learning materials for people with disability in terms of accessibility, easy to read formats, so that they can, cope with non-disabled learners. So basically, just wanted to say that one of our innovation is really adaptive, and we are working on a lot of leadership and technology projects that provides inclusive hiring and inclusive employment for young persons with disabilities. But in order to know more about our organization, I'm going to share with you our link. You can check it out and you see more about us. And then I would also share my email. You can always reach me on my email. And thank you for this opportunity. And I hope to see us next year. Thank you.
Well, guess that leaves me. Hi, my name is Chastity Brown. I am the Social Impact Director and co-founder of Elevate Your Essence. Our whole purpose of Elevate Your Essence is to help youth create a story, tell their story, to gain experience, and to also gain some creative collaboration with their peers and with mentors. All around, it is to help youth gain experience and to build their portfolio, which is very important. I think it's very needed. And you can reach us at the Elevated Essence on Instagram because the youth love Instagram. And you can reach us at elevateyouressence.org through the internet, or any software device.
Perfect. When we package this up and we make it a video, we'll make sure we subtitle all of those so that people can see it on the screen, and check out the great work that you're doing, and hopefully mobilize support and resources towards it. I want to thank all of you for sharing your time, your insights, your stories today. It's incredibly valuable, inspiring, and I'm so grateful for all the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for this extraordinary panel.